What's up, everybody? Hobby with Cage 178, brought to you by Bleecker Trading, brought to you by Arena Club. You're saying to yourself, wow, he just posted an episode yesterday. It was Tuesday night, and I don't know why it didn't upload. So I was looking yesterday. I'm like, why do I have no views on the video I posted Tuesday night? Well, I didn't post it. So I posted it up yesterday morning, and now 24 hours later, it looks like we got another one coming on. But I wanted to jump on and talk because I got a lot of feedback from yesterday's episode. Yes, I did it myself from last episode. And almost all positive, right? And it's funny because I didn't think it would all be positive because I kind of went into it. It's okay to every once in a while talk about your, I don't want to call it a general malaise, but talk about your feelings about the space, right? And how sometimes you get burnt out by it. Sometimes life, gives you other things that you want to focus on, instead of the hobby. It's holiday time, you got to spend your money on other stuff and, just everything's in your face. And it's funny because, um, while I was still positive about the hobby, I talked about, selling stuff from, a PSA, a set registry that I was building and, kind of giving up on that. And a lot of people, agreed with the sentiment and said that they had, similar, things happen in their hobby journey over the last year as well. Um, but it wasn't supposed to come on and be, sort of negative. It was just, every once in a while, you want to talk about how you're feeling, how you're navigating the space, because the folks who are out there listening, you're probably going through some of the same stuff, and you want to hear that, it's okay. It doesn't mean you got to run for the hills. Every once in a while, you kind of, you're meandering in the space a little bit. But what's funny about it is that I started talking about, like, the content that was out there and just how it's a breaking and repacking, and some of it seemed forced, and it's funny because every once in a while, myself included, you got to take a step back and realize that I talked about new people coming into the space and how they're going to get burned and how they're going to, the jersey swaps and all the stuff that I talked about like how, let's 10x the hobby and, how are we going to bring new people in? And what's funny is I realized, because of a couple of messages that I've gotten in the last couple of days, that I'm guilty of it myself in not helping, keep folks here or bring folks here because, well, I'm not scamming them. On the flip side, I don't do a good job of realizing that not everybody who listens to this is someone who's been here since the 80s. Now, a lot of you are, and that's great, and I think you enjoy it, right? And I make the mistake of thinking like, all right, everybody understands what I'm talking about with the boom and bust cycle, and everyone's been here since COVID, and everyone's been here and seen the Luca and Trey madness, followed by the Zion and Ja madness, followed by the attempt to replicate that madness and the failure of it every single time. And every year a new quarterback comes out and they're going to be the best thing since the one before them. And some people are coming in now. And I have to be more mindful of that as well. And if you're one of those folks, please, I said this, like send me messages, right? Send me questions, send me what you have. And it's funny because it's, you kind of gotta broaden how you look at this stuff, right? And maybe for the sake of this episode and new folks who here, I'm gonna read a message that I got. I woke up this morning at like 5 o'clock. Message was waiting for me at like 6 a.m. I sent a response back. Send some voice messages. I won't play those. I'll just try to do my best in the episode to kind of, replicate what my message was. And the folks listening to this, some of this is going to be stuff you have your own method for, or stuff you might agree with me on. And it's going to be like, I already know this. What I'm curious about is, what do you think about my take on it? And what's your own? Like, how do you do it? And let's just get into it. I'll read the message and then I'll tell you what my answer was to this. And then I have an ask for you guys out there. If you are somebody who, hears this question and is like, wow, I remember when I was that new, and this information is not for you, my ask is actually to you. And it's, realize that there are other people out there who you will come across who will have the same question, who will have questions similar. And if you have the ability to answer those questions for them or, help them out in the space, then we're all kind of doing our part. It doesn't have to be just fanatics, and Panini and whoever else, making it a safe space for people. You can be part of what, kind of grows the hobby if that's what you want. So anyway, new listener, it was in the, message requests, or, new messages, not somebody, who I get a lot. And, every once in a while, you don't realize or you don't know who's finding the content, who's hearing it, whether it's, on the podcast or YouTube, watching the videos. And I gotta be mindful that there are new people coming in still, and welcome if that's you. So anyway, here you go. Greetings. Very nice. And I'm not gonna tell you the name, but I'm sure if this person goes on and continues to watch the content, they'll be like, "Wait, that's my message." So anyway, greetings. I'm reading it here on my phone. Let's see. I discovered your show recently and really enjoy it. I just started collecting again for the first time since I was a kid. This happens. I mean, this is a lot of us, the majority of people watching this probably. And I just started collecting again for the first time since I was a kid and missed the entire recent boom bust cycle. And it's been fascinating listening to older episodes of yours compared to recent ones. It's kind of what I'm talking about, right? We have the older ones where it was crazy. It was almost like CNBC, right? For cards. It was like, let's talk about the cards that are moving today. Let's talk about this one. And Pete Alonso's rookie and Fernando Tatis. And who talks about those guys anymore? And it's really, that was an eye-opening part of it as well, because I don't go back and listen to my content. Hell, there's like 1,200 episodes. But it's an interesting thing to think about. It really is. Anyway, your anecdotes about collecting in the 80s and early 90s really bring me back to the Ben McDonald chase days and riding my bike to the local card shop in Huntington Beach to trade one for several Upper Deck packs as well. I mean, Scott Erickson, I talk about Ben McDonald. I mean, these are like, 1990, 1991, like Upper Deck, where I remember chasing and, you're going in and getting a shack. And I mean, it's funny, right? And obviously, somebody who has a similar hobby past, but did not come in during this last boom run up. So this is a great thing, I think, for me to point out for you guys and for you guys to be mindful of, right? This is exactly what we want. We want people coming in now, not just people who were, brought in by the craziness. Now where there are a lot of people out there saying that, the hobby is not as good. The hobby doesn't look as good or it's not as inviting to people. But here is somebody who's coming back in after collecting in the 80s and 90s and wasn't brought back in by the pandemic or COVID, but there's something bringing them in now, okay? He follows and says, I have a question about storing cards and grading. Here you go. This is what I'm guilty of, right? You just gloss over this stuff and realize, what's old hat to me, I just take it for granted. Somebody coming in now, they don't know, right? So I've been buying primarily blaster and hobby boxes at Target and Costco, and I've hit some Wembies along with some of the top rookies in football, basketball, baseball that I'm interested in holding for the long term. At what price point does it make sense to send some in for grading? Also, how do you store your good cards before grading? Do you use magnetic holders, penny sleeves, he calls them penny slips, and top holders, both? And he signs off. And I will tell you, I'm not going to show you. I don't want to show you the name, but I answered a lot, and then I'm going to scroll. You can see. I put some voice messages in there. Anyway, so there you go. I don't want to blow this guy up, but I am appreciative for a message like that. And some of the stuff I wanted to respond to is too long. I had to put a voice message in, but it got me thinking maybe this is something, not the storing stuff. I know you guys would, you know what you do, but it's funny for the storing stuff. I mean, I said there are cards I don't want to grade. I put them in, one touches. That's it, just nice and easy. But I do actually have a method of keeping my cards. If you went into my Magic Basement cards, if you went into the basement where I keep all my cards, you would find cards stored in top loaders, and you would find, penny sleeve top loader, and you'd find cards stored in penny sleeve and semi-rigid, card saver. That's a nice, easy, bright line demarcation for me. Cards that I'm planning to send in for grading, they're in those semi-rigids because that's what you have to send them into grading. And you know what? Every once in a while, I have to come back to the cards I have. Ian and I will rip, and I'll say, okay, this one is in a semi-rigid, this one's in this. And then when I put a grading submission together at the end of the month, it's nice and easy for me. I have those semi-rigids. I have those, here you go. That's how I do it. That's how I store the stuff. But the bigger part of the question is, when do you send in for grading? Like, when do you send those cards in? And let's just assume for a second we're talking about PSA right now. Okay. So my first answer, and I want to hear yours. So tell me, how do you make that decision? Is there a value proposition there? Is there any card worth more than this? Is there, I don't send in any card that's worth less than X? Like, I'd love to hear what your take was, and then I'll tell you what mine was to this new listener. And, I hope it provides some value to this person and maybe to you. And it's a fun little conversation, right? The hell, if PSA's listening to this, they'll probably enjoy it too. And what I said, listen, if these are cards you're looking to hold for the long term and you think they're going to go up in value and they are your top guys, Wemby, you name it, the whole deal, you send it in because you're not worried about, am I going to get this back and flip it in the following week, in the next month? If you're really looking at, holding these things, then, it's a different calculation. But what I did recommend was go and look, you can type right into Google, PSA grading specials. And the first thing will pop up, I'll tell you what specials there are. And right now, at least for a couple more days, they're running a special for these type of modern cards. I think it's like $15 or $15.99 per card. If you're doing non-sport TCG, it's like $13.99 right now. And they run those kind of promotions like that almost every month. So definitely take advantage of that. And, I do the Collectors Club. Some people go right to GameStop now. I mean, there's a million ways of doing it. But as far as what cards to grade and, price point value wise, and how do you do that? There's no shortcut. And I said this in my voice message. It is going to take a little bit of research on your behalf. But here's what I do. And this is what I taught my son, right? When we're going through our cards so that he can do this on his own. And there's no one method. This is mine, right? There are many rifles out there. This one is mine. A little Full Metal Jacket for you, right? This is my method, right? This is my method. And I'd love to hear yours. You got to research. And my main source for research, right? I mean, you use Card Ladder and stuff like that, but I go on to eBay for what this individual is talking about, modern cards. If your goal is to open your stuff at Costco and Target, and you're pulling out your Wembys and you're pulling out your cards, you're pulling out your rookies, your rookie quarterbacks, whatever it is, and you want to determine whether it makes sense or not to grade those cards and then sell them. I take eBay. I go on there, I go to the completed listings, and what I type in is the card in PSA 9. Not 10, PSA 9. All right? And I see how much the card sells for in PSA 9. And if it is a loser, if the grading fee and the value of the card raw-ish, what you have into the card, if it is a clear-cut losing money on PSA 9, I do not grade it. And most people look at the PSA 10 and they say, wow, if I grade this card's like, I'm going to 8 times my grading value or 10 times my grading value, or I'm going to really, fine. And we'll get to that in a second. But why I use the PSA 9 is because you can't assume a 10. And that's a mistake a lot of people make, right? Everybody assumes you open a pack of cards, it's going to grade a 10. And if you listen to my stuff or watch my stories, you realize I've graded hundreds of modern cards coming out of packs from this year's products. In the last couple of months, I've gotten back returns. I'm not doing well as far as a percentage of 10s. I don't know if that's a new mandate. I don't know if that's just the way it is. I don't know if the quality control coming out on the packs is not so fantastic. But, Chrome basketball, the unlicensed Topps Chrome, basketball stuff that they came out with, I don't have a good rate with Wemby on those things. I just don't. And I mean, the composite football is the same stuff. The Prism stuff, a little bit better. But the modern stuff, for me, is not grading that well. So I'm going to assume, because I'm a little more conservative, I'm going to assume a 9 and hope for a 10. I don't want to lose money on grading, right? I don't. And you're going to get some 10s. And the 10s, You don't want your tens to be making up for the losses you're getting on nines. Because then the whole thing becomes a break-even experiment. And is that really what you're doing it for? It's a lot of time, it's a lot of stuff, you name it. And, you know, that's a lot to go through for breaking even, right? So my rule of thumb, and this is what I told this guy, is I don't want to lose money on nines. Do you want to, if it's a break even on a nine and make money on a 10, fine. You don't want to lose money. You know what I mean? You don't want to lose money because, like, there are cards out there with top rookies right now. I don't know. He might be breaking score. What are you getting on a PSA 9? Even Jaden Daniels, who everybody wants, right? What are you getting on a score base card, with a PSA 9? You're probably losing money. And that's an interesting thing to watch because it's kind of a little bit of a change, right? PSA 9, it's selling for like raw, and in some cases less than raw. Because the real, chase, real what everybody wants is they hope they take that raw card and they grade it and it gets a 10. When people are buying raw cards to grade, they're grading and hoping they get a 10. You buy a card that's a PSA 9, you already know it didn't get a 10. So it's an interesting thing to watch. It really is. And I mean, listen, I want this guy to enjoy the hobby. I want him to put some stuff away for the long term. But this was my kind of rule of thumb on which of these, ultra modern cards, let's call them, probably new quarterbacks, basketball rookies, baseball rookies to put away. Now, keep in mind, this individual is planning on holding them, So maybe he has a rookie that he thinks is going to get better and increase in time, in value over time, and wants to have those cards and hold them. Fine. Different story, right? But my answer is for the majority of people out there who are ripping their stuff, looking to grade, get it back in a couple of months and just sell it when they get it back. The best thing for me, take a look at what the PSA 9s sell for, and that'll determine whether you're going to grade the card. Because if you get a 9, which by the way is a great grade, it's a mint card. If you get a 9 back and you're going to be pissed off after you sell it, and factor in whatever it's going to cost you to sell as well, right? So, even if you're into the card for $20, including the grading fee, and you see the PSA 9 sells for $20, remember, you're probably not getting $20 for it because you got to list it or you got to give it to a consignor or, someone at a show is going to want to pay you, 65 or 70 cents on a dollar on it. So there's a lot of fun stuff that goes into it. And I want to know what you guys do. Do you have a rule like that? That's kind of my general rule. Throw some comments in YouTube, if you have that, or send me a message about what you do. But the bigger picture here is to be mindful that, look at this, right after I did an episode about like people coming in and, being chased out of the space because of all the, the lunacy, I get a message like this, that it's grounding, right? It's grounding. It reminds me that I can't paint with such broad strokes, but there are people out there new to the game, people out there coming in now who, don't know what we all know, don't know what people who have been here for a while know. And it's our job to kind of share it with them. You know what I mean? It really is. So yeah, I mean, and just from a personal standpoint, it was, I'm going to say, reinvigorating, right? Because I can turn on the Instagram machine and be like, what's going on out there, right? I mean, the stuff that you're looking at, this space, sometimes it's a little wacky. It's like a crazy carnival out there, I mean, you got giveaways going on live streams, and you got breakers breaking whatever the hell those dolls are, and you got, I don't know, it just sometimes it's a little crazy, but then every once in a while you realize, you know what? There are people out there just opening cards and hoping to pull rookies and need to figure out what to do next. And it's kind of how we all got in, right? I mean, you buy a pack of cards trying to get the guy you wanted. That's what I talked about in the last episode. So, to me, it made me want to come on here today, talk, smile for you guys, and, make sure, one, I ain't going anywhere. Two, neither should you. You know what I mean? Like, have some fun with it. And look, if you haven't seen my story yet, I'm trying to have some fun with it also this morning. Out of nowhere, everybody's talking about pairing their cards up. That used to just be a Spinatron thing. I made a pair and this pair of underwear. And I mean, it's a whole. Now I see I paired up this card with this card. When did that become a thing? Anyway, hopefully you enjoy my story because I was just trying to have some fun with it. But you know, you should too have some fun with it. And one more I'm going to throw out there, right? And this is another message that I got. This is from somebody who is, is a collector, and it's funny. I just kind of did a whole PSA spiel, and PSA should thank me because here I am explaining to people, when to send cards into PSA, and I just use PSA as the example, right? SGC is now owned by PSA. So if I say something, I don't want to say negative, right? But if I say, my take on SGC, right? This now is another conversation I had with someone who's been around for a while, but has never really used SGC. And I used to use SGC. I used to sponsor the podcast. I mean, talk about customer service, talk about, the turnaround time, the non-upcharging, just the pricing. Our friend Steve just posted, 2-week turnaround, boom, new cards coming in great. There's definitely a value to it, right? But I'm getting a lot of messages about, SGC 9.5s selling for less than raw, and SGC 10s, basically not really giving you too much of a premium. And the messages that I got, it's in a group chat with a lot of people you would know. It says, hey guys, I'm still trying to figure out what makes sense sending to SGC. I've seen 10 selling for basically the same price as raw for modern. Is modern a waste of time with them? I haven't sent anything over yet. I'm wondering what is the stuff to send to SGC, if anything. I added that on there. He said, I haven't sent anything over there yet. I said, SGC, in my opinion, 2 things you'd use it for. 1, and I want to hear your take on this too, guys, because there are people out there who love SGC. Vintage, different story. They're great with vintage. They're great with vintage baseball. Their prices hold up. They know what they're doing in vintage baseball. This question is about modern. So let's start there and kind of narrow down the discussion. I said I use it for 2 things. Number 1, if I want to get a new release graded, to get it on eBay or somewhere else and sell it first. Why? Because it doesn't matter what the card is. The price. It's inexpensive. And they're going to get it back to you in a couple of weeks. If you try to get a smaller card that you don't want to pay a ton for through PSA grading, it's going to take longer. You will probably not be the first one getting that thing for sale. But if you throw it through SGC, they turn the stuff around pretty fast. So you have a shot to do that. So that's number 1. And number 2, I'd love to know what you guys think about this, right? Because it's a strategy. If I have a valuable card, I want to pre-grade it before paying a hefty fee at PSA. SGC charges the same for a card no matter what it is. So if it's a card that you would send to PSA and it's going to be expensive to grade, because that's how they do it, right? They have kind of like layers of grading fee based on value. You send it to SGC. If it gets an SGC 10, you use that as sort of like a pre-grade, right? To determine whether you want to send it to PSA. If SGC doesn't 10 it, it doesn't go to PSA at all. Now, we're talking about the right kind of card here, right? Not something you want to get on eBay immediately, but you can do that SGC almost like you grade it with SGC. If it doesn't do what you want it to do, or it's not something you want to go to PSA with, it's not something you want to spend extra money on, it's not something that, needs to be in a PSA holder, you just sell it. But it comes back in SGC 10 and it's something that has some significant value. You've now not thrown a ton of money away. You haven't wasted a lot of time. And you can send it to PSA if you want to. That's my thought. That was the advice I gave. Wondering if you think that's a waste of time. Wondering if that's something you do. Anyway, I like this stuff, a whole episode on it, because, listen, we can come on here and talk about $1 million cards all the time, and Sotheby's and Tom Brady's watches, and we can talk about all the craziness and all the stuff, and that's awesome, right? And it drives the hobby. It's the top of the space, and there's money, and there's $250,000, Michael Jordan exquisite cards that used to be $12 last year, but now they're selling for $250,000. Not $12, but significantly less than $240,000. We can talk about that stuff all the time, but you know what? That's not the space. It's part of it, but it's a very small part of it. And yeah, it's great to glorify that. It's great to put that out there and hold it out there because it makes headlines. It's cool news and all that other stuff. But generally speaking, This is the stuff we talked about for years on the episode. This is the education that was out there. These are the conversations that are out there. These are the fun things to talk about, how you navigate the space, how I navigate the space. Maybe you have something that I can learn from. Put it in the comments. It's like Mr. Rogers. You'll have things you'll like to talk about, and I will too. You know what I mean? This got me smiling. This got me happy. This got me wanting to come on here and talk to you guys today. And I hope the episode does the same thing for you guys, because every once in a while, let's take a step back, look at the space, remind yourself it's vast. There's a lot of stories out there. There's a lot of different people bringing different hobby experiences to the equation. And sometimes there's new people who, could use a little bit of advice. And if you're that new person, message me. I will message you back. Hell, you might get 4 voice messages from me, more than you bargained for. And, those free voice messages, these episodes for free, send a little message and thank Bleecker Trading and Arena Club, because I'm coming to you free, because they are sponsors of the show. Love those guys. I love you. Got the spinning Christmas tree behind us. Hope you guys all enjoyed this one. I'll come back to you again soon. And, it's early morning, but I'm already caffeinated. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody.